Spring and Autumn Masters. Chapter 1, The Soul Goes Through Troubled Times. In the 31st year of Duke Liu Xianggong, I woke up and found that I had traveled to the spring and autumn period. The iron rice bowl that was originally in the library was lost, and the best friend died, and his career was ruined. What's worse is that he was forced into exile and was in a state of embarrassment. I rubbed my eyes, looked at the beacons and chaotic cities around me, and secretly complained in my heart, it's really chaotic these days. But it's okay, who let this era meet me? Chapter 2, Zhengguo Zikan's Reform. I came to Zhengguo just as Zikan was implementing reforms. Zikan governed the country rigorously, but the reform caused dissatisfaction among the old forces. I observed the situation, secretly made strategic suggestions, and cleverly used the knowledge of the original library to resolve disputes. Zikan was surprised, this person has extraordinary vision. I thought to myself, this is just the beginning. Chapter 3, The Dark Tide of the Six Ministers of the Jin State. The six ministers of the Jin State fought openly and secretly, each winning over allies and plotting hegemony. From the perspective of a soul piercer, I predict the movements of all parties and secretly lay out the layout. At a banquet, I pretended not to comment on the situation, but I said the key points of the struggle between the six ministers of the Jin State, which made the princes present stunned. I laughed secretly in my heart, the spring and autumn rebellion is nothing more than that. Chapter 4, Qi Jinggong's Careful Thoughts. Duke Jing of Qi was ready to move, wanting to expand his power after Duke Liu Xianggong's death. I used my historical knowledge and geographical advantages to predict the movements of the state of Qi and put forward defensive suggestions to the old ministers of the state of Liu. Although they were skeptical, they finally followed the plan, and Qi Jinggong's actions were forced to be delayed. Chapter 5, The Regicide Drama of King Ling of Chu. In the southern Chu state, King Ling plotted to kill the king. I secretly sent someone to inquire about the news and used a scheme to reveal some details of the conspiracy, causing chaos among the ministers of Chu. Although it cannot be completely stopped, it is enough to protect oneself temporarily. I sighed, these days, troubled times are everywhere, but I know better than anyone else to avoid danger. Chapter 6, Adventures on the Road to Exile. During my exile, I met a mysterious old man who claimed to know the art of destiny. He took me through dangerous places and told me about the secret information of various countries in the spring and autumn period. I used my original knowledge to combine the current situation and secretly plan a counterattack. The old man nodded, boy, you are extraordinary. Chapter 7, Fighting the Jin Messenger. The Jin envoy came to negotiate, and I confused the other party with false information and schemes. After the envoy returned to China, the six ministers of Jin began to divide internally to buy space for me during my exile. I am secretly glad that historical knowledge and strategy and sense of humor can really save lives. Chapter 8, Zhengguo's Dark Tide. Zikan's reforms angered some of the old forces, and I used my wisdom to help Zikan appease the nobles and resolve the coup crisis. At a banquet, I used humor to resolve the embarrassment and hinted that if the old forces rebelled again, they would be in chaos. Everyone exclaimed, this person is really unfathomable. I laughed in my heart, this is just a warm-up, the real drama is yet to come. Chapter 9, Chu's Assassination Plan. King Ling of Chu sent assassins to try to stop my plan. I used the observation and terrain analysis of Kim and Dunjia to successfully avoid the assassin's pursuit. In the dead of night, I stood on the top of the mountain, looking at the Chu palace under the moonlight, secretly thinking about my next strategy. Chapter 10, Spring and Autumn is not king. I laughed secretly in my heart, in this era, although it is chaotic, who let me meet it? Duke Xiang of Liu died, Zhengguo reformed, the six ministers of Jin fought openly and secretly, Duke Jing of Qi was stupid, and King Ling of Chu plotted to kill the king. I, originally a small library clerk, am now in spring and autumn, not a king, and I have to live my own wonderful life in troubled times. Chapter 11, The Temptation of the State of Liu. The new king of Liu Guo succeeded to the throne, and when he heard that I had repeatedly spoken about the situation, he was suspicious. A minister proposed to test me, so he set up a banquet to hide the conspiracy. I pretended to be drunk and casually said the east wind is not conducive to the western army, and there will be chaos in the south. Soon, news came, Qi attack failed, and the civil strife in Chu intensified. The ministers of Liu looked at each other and could only whisper, this person really has a secret. Chapter 12, GVS. Han Zhaozai. Han Zhaozai, one of the six ministers of Jin, sent someone to invite me to Jin, hoping to use my strategy to suppress my opponent. I thought to myself, this is an opportunity. Facing Han Zhaozai, I deliberately proposed a seemingly absurd reverse strategy, which made him wonder. In the end, he followed the plan, and although he lost in the short term, he forced his opponent to confuse himself. Han Zhaozai exclaimed, this person is unfathomable. I laughed secretly in my heart, it's just a small trick. Chapter 13, Zhengguo's Night Talk. Zikan invited me to talk at night. Under the moon, he sighed, I have been praying for the peace of the country and the people all my life, but I am always blocked. I smiled faintly, my lord, your heart is heavier than that of me, a person who has traveled through time. Don't worry, history will remember your name. Zikin was puzzled, but his eyes lit up. That night, I sat side by side with Zikin and saw the most determined back of Chen Kaiu. Chapter 14, Qi Jinggong's Cunning. Qi Jinggong was unwilling to fail and began to secretly provoke the relationship between Liu and Jin. He sent generous gifts and sent beauties to test me. I publicly exposed it in the main hall. Qi Jinggong's gift is just an empty box. When everyone opened it, there was indeed nothing inside. The audience was in an uproar, and Qi Guo lost face. Chapter 15, The Assassin's Return. Furious, King Ling of Chu sent another assassin. This time, the assassin, named Night Crow, possessed uncanny martial arts skills, making him incredibly silent at night. I harnessed the power of the stars and the light of the flames to create a phantom trap, leading Night Crow into the flames and nearly incinerating himself. Terrified, he knelt, calling me a ghost immortal. I coldly replied, I won't kill you. Go back and tell King Ling of Chu that fate cannot be reversed. Chapter 16, The Banquet Turmoil in Jin. I traveled to the state of Jin and attended a banquet hosted by the 6 nobles. At the banquet, the 6 families, Fan, Zhong, Zhao, Han, Wei, and Ji, each harbored their own ulterior motives, creating a turbulent undercurrent. Someone deliberately offered a toast to me, testing my judgment. I raised my glass and smiled, praising the Fan family's fortitude and then the Han family's strategic thinking. Then, with a smile, I said, 6 dragons vie for the heavens, only unity of purpose can prevail. With these words, the 6 nobles fell into deep thought, and the banquet's disturbance was diffused. Chapter 17, The Chu Palace Dream. One night, I dreamed of the Chu Palace burning brightly. In the dream, a woman in red whispered, if you don't move, the Chu Palace will be stained with blood within 3 years. When he woke up, he had a wisp of charred ash on his sleeve. I was shocked, is this an illusion or a warning from fate? Chapter 18, The Choice of the State of Liu. The new ruler of Liu was undecided, unsure whether to ally with Jin or Chu. The ministers argued endlessly, nearly dividing the court. I simply said, observing the celestial phenomena, if Liu turns south, it will suffer a bloody catastrophe, if it turns north, it will suffer a short-lived pain, but it will prosper for a long time. Everyone was skeptical, but the new ruler ultimately obeyed. Soon, civil unrest broke out in Chu, and Liu was spared a major disaster. Chapter 19, The Dark Tide Rises Again. Although the Jin state temporarily calmed down, Zhaibo's ambitions gradually emerged. He once sent someone to ask me, if there is a country under my control, can it dominate? I just smiled and said, no matter how wide the river is, it can't hold the countercurrent. Zhaibo pondered, but did not understand. I sighed in my heart, the wheel of history may be difficult to reverse. Chapter 20, I am not a king in the spring and autumn period. One day, I stood alone on a high platform, watching envoys from various nations rush about, armies clash, and civilians flee. Someone asked me, you are so wise and resourceful, why don't you make yourself king? I laughed, a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. In the spring and autumn period, I wouldn't have been king. Because being a king doesn't guarantee control of the world, but I, can control the king's fate. The wind whistled, and the stage for this chaotic world had just begun. Chapter 21, A Trip to Luoyang. As the Zhou royal family grew increasingly chaotic, the princes appointed me as an envoy to Luoyang to mediate. While staying overnight in a dilapidated temple, I suddenly heard a group of beggars singing a children's rhyme, Dragon in the East Sea, Fire in the West Mountain, Blood in the Royal City, the world falls. I was horrified. The next day, I entered the palace and, as expected, witnessed fierce internal strife, brothers turning against each other, and the flashing of swords and sabers practically erupting. I realized this children's rhyme was perhaps a divine omen. Chapter 22, The Stargazer in White. On the outskirts of the royal city, I met an old man in white who called himself a stargazer. He only smiled at me and said, you are not a person of this world, but you bear the fate of this world. I asked him how to solve it. He just pointed to the sky and said softly, the galaxy has fallen, where is the way back? After saying that, the figure dissipated, as if it had never existed. I clenched my fists, and a chill ran down in my heart. Chapter 23, The Prisoner of King Ling of Chu. King Ling of Chu sent someone to set up a banquet and invited me again. I knew there was a deception, but I had to go. Sure enough, there was a sword soldier during the banquet, and I was trapped in the dungeon of the Chu Palace. The dungeon was dark and the chains were dense, but there was faint crying and laughing. A blood-stained prisoner said to me, be careful. King. He is crazy. Before the words fell, the prisoner's eyes instantly disappeared, and he died of death. Chapter 24, Dungeon Illusion. Trapped in the dungeon for 3 days, no water or rice entered. On the 4th day, I suddenly found that the stone wall was flooded, revealing a mural. The mountains and rivers were in turmoil, and the princes were fighting. I reached out and touched it, and when my eyes turned, I felt like I was being pulled into another illusion. In the illusion, I saw King Ling of Chu killing his brother with his own hands, and I saw the 6 ministers of Jin killing each other, and I also saw the palace of Lu stained with blood. When I woke up, I was covered in a cold sweat. Is this an illusion or a precursor? Chapter 25, Escape from Death. The Chu palace was in turmoil, and a palace maid secretly let me escape. Before I left, she slipped me a jade pendant engraved with the characters Wangshu. She whispered, "If you ever see Wangshu, you'll know what to do." I hurriedly fled without asking. Looking back at the Chu palace, flames shot up into the sky, and King Ling of Chu roared and laughed maniacally amid the chaos. Chapter 26, The Change of Gilu. Upon returning to Lu, I found the country in turmoil. The new emperor was gravely ill, and the powerful minister Zhao Enyi was intent on seizing power. He openly questioned me, "You claim to know destiny, so why don't you ensure the safety of Lu?" I calmly replied, "It's not that I can't, but that you don't believe it." Zhao Enyi's face turned pale, and he ordered me placed under house arrest. At night, however, the people spontaneously gathered at the gate of my house, lighting lanterns like stars and shouting in unison, "Sir, you must not die." Chapter 27, The People's Choice. The state of Lu was in turmoil, and the people were forced to die and demanded my release. Zhao Enyi had no choice but to let go, but his murderous intent was even stronger. I knew that there were dangers lurking, and secretly decided, either leave the state of Lu or completely control power. However, another voice in his heart whispered, "You say you should not be a king, but if you don't take charge of the world, how can you protect this common people?" Chapter 28, The Invitation of the State of Qi. At this time, Duke Jing of Qi sent people to send generous gifts, and was even willing to promise him the position of prime minister. My heart was moved, but I hesitated. Late at night, I dreamed that the woman in red reappeared. She stretched out her hand and put her hand on my chest and whispered, "If you are in the same place, the sea of blood will be boundless." When I woke up, there was indeed a bright red palm print on my chest, which lasted for a long time. Chapter 29, Tengu Eats the Moon. One night, an unusual celestial phenomenon occurred. The moon was eclipsed by a celestial dog. The people were horrified, the princes were shaken, and they sent messengers to ask for an explanation. I simply replied, "This is a sign of great chaos under heaven." Sure enough, a few months later, infighting broke out among the 6 nobles of Jin, and rivers of blood flowed. People said I could foresee the will of heaven, but little did they know that I felt only a heaviness in my heart. Chapter 30, Bloodstains Jinyang. When the news came, the city of Jinyang was broken, blood flowed, and the pestle flowed, and Haibo's bones were gone. I stood alone on the high platform and watched the smoke billowing in the distance. Someone asked me, "Is this the ending you knew?" I replied in a low voice, "I knew." But powerless to change. In the wind, the jade pendant Wangshu suddenly glowed, as if calling me to embark on a more bizarre path. Chapter 31, Wangshu reappears. In the middle of the night, I suddenly saw the light from the jade pendant transform into a long, silvery path, leading into the wilderness. Following the path, I stumbled upon an unnamed ancient temple. Inside, dimly lit, a woman in white sat, her brows cold and expressionless. She smiled faintly, "I am Wangshu. Do you think you can escape fate?" My heart trembled, but I said, "Fate? Fate is just an excuse." Chapter 32, Blood Book of Destiny. Wangshu said nothing, only flicking her sleeve. A bloody message appeared on the wall. The bloody words read, "Lu will perish, Qi will split, Chu will be in chaos, Jin will be divided. The world will be united, and a king will emerge." I was shocked. This bloody message was a perfect match for what I had witnessed in recent years. She stared at me, her voice like a sword, "The king must be you." My body went cold, and I roared. I said, "I don't want to be king." Chapter 33, The Nameless Shadow. Back in Ludi, he often dreamed of dark shadows at night. The black shadow has no face, but it has the same voice as mine. It always whispers in its ear, "If you are not king, the common people will die. If you are king, the common people will die. Let's choose." I was driven crazy, waking up every night, sweat soaking my clothes. Finally, I began to wonder if my existence was the fuse of troubled times. Chapter 34, The Lords Meet the Alliance. The princes of Qi, Chu, Lu, and Zheng gathered together to discuss dealing with Jin on the surface, but in fact they secretly harbored ghosts. In the big tent of the alliance, the shadow of the sword was hidden in the laughter. It was suggested that I could be a CO master. I suppressed my anger and replied coldly, I am not a king, but a sword in troubled times. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned, but they were secretly even more afraid of me. Chapter 35, Night Raid. On the night of the end of the alliance, the tent was suddenly attacked by fire. I was surrounded and killed by dozens of men in black, and blood splattered under the firelight. I fought desperately, only to find that the men in black had the same words engraved on their chests, King. I was shocked and knew in my heart that this was not an assassination, but a persecution. Someone is using death to push me down the path of King. Chapter 36, Return to Luoyang. I once again set foot in Luoyang, only to find the royal city in ruins, the throne vacant. The people wailed, and refugees spread across the land. I ascended a height to gaze upon the city, my heart aching. Then, in my ears, the shadowy voice echoed again, if you do not ascend, the world will shatter into ash. I clutched my sword, speechless for a long moment. Chapter 37, Ghost Market Night. In order to find the truth, I sneaked into the ghost market under Luoyang City. Thieves, wandering spirits, and wands gathered here, and the lights were dim, like a yellow spring. A blind fortune teller grabbed me and whispered, the shadow behind you is about to devour you. I turned around in shock and saw my shadow moving, independent of the light, and sneered at me. Chapter 38, Shadow and Me. Since then, the shadow no longer moves with me, but occasionally stands in the distance, looking at me from a distance. Sometimes it imitates me, and sometimes it makes a different voice. You will eventually understand that only I am the real you. I finally realized that this shadow is not an illusion, but a cognate existence with me. It may be another me brought about by time travel. Chapter 39, The Game of Destiny. Atop the ruins, I played chess with a shadow. The chessboard was like the universe. Every time a black or white piece fell, it instantly manifested itself in the real world. Where the black piece landed, the Lu army was defeated, where the white piece landed, the Chu army triumphed. The shadow chuckled, can you see? The world is like a chess piece, and you, neither a piece nor a hand, are the chessboard itself. My heart trembled, and my fingers gripped the chess piece tightly, nearly shattering it. Chapter 40, The Blood Throne. On the final night, Luoyang burned, killing and wounding countless princes. The people spontaneously pushed me onto the shattered throne, chanting, Heaven's mandate rests with you. My hands trembled as I gazed upon the engulfing city. Suddenly, a shadow merged with me, and a final whisper reached my ears, you cannot escape. I opened my mouth, but only a mouthful of blood gushed out. In the eyes of everyone, at that moment, I was king. Chapter 41, Before the Throne. On the walls of Luoyang, the wind howled, and embers of fire burned among the ruins. The ministers and the people pushed me up to the palace, asking me to sit on the empty throne. But I stopped. If I take this seat, there's no going back, I knew. But behind me, thousands of eyes were filled with pleading. Chapter 42, The Shadow Returns. From the depths of the palace, a familiar chuckle echoed. You don't dare sit? Then I'll take it. A shadow stepped out. It looked identical to me, but there was a cold fire in its eyes. It gently took its seat, and the ministers knelt in an instant. My chest tightened, realizing it was going to replace me. Chapter 43, Wangshu's Rift. I ran to the eastern suburbs to see Wangshu again. Her robes had shattered into shimmering light, her figure scattering in the wind. I've protected you for too long, but ultimately, I can't defy fate. Her voice trembled. If you kill Shadow, the world might survive. If you lose, all will perish. I asked, what if I kill myself? Wangshu remained silent, her tears falling like stars. Chapter 44, The Collapse of Troubled Times. The 6 nobles of Jin slaughtered each other, Duke Jing of Qi was in civil strife, and King Ling of Chu ultimately murdered his own father. The earth cracked, famine spread, and the mountains and rivers flowed with blood. Hordes of people fled their homes, their cries resounding. Standing in the midst of this chaos, I felt a chill in my chest. A shadow smiled from afar, see? Without a king, this would be the outcome. Chapter 45, The Decision of Luoshui. I made an appointment with the shadow to fight in Luoshui. The wind swept through the blood waves, and the sword light split the night sky. Every blow reflects my past choices, once a bystander, a calculation, a past evasion. The shadow laughed, you are me. To kill me is to kill yourself. I roared, I'd rather cut off myself than be a puppet. Chapter 46, Bloody Blade Self-Determination. I suddenly put the sword on my chest and stabbed it suddenly. Blood splattered, and the shadow's pupils shrank suddenly, and then cracked, shattering into light dust. Heaven and earth were silent for a moment. I stumbled down, and the waves of the Luo River dyed the blood red. Finally. It's clean. I murmured. Chapter 47, Dead and Not Dead. 3 days later, I woke up to the cries of the people. They knelt all over the riverbank and shouted, "Holy King!" My heart was like a knife, and I whispered, "I am not a king." But there was only faith in their eyes, and no one heard it. At that moment, I understood that the mandate of heaven was not given by God, but pushed by man. Chapter 48, The Crown is like a lock. On the day of the coronation, the crown felt as heavy as shackles. The ministers shouted, "Long live the king!" And the people wept in gratitude. Yet, deep down, I felt only irony. Wang Shu's final words faded away, "If you live for the heavens, you will no longer have yourself." I looked up at the sky, tears streaming down my face. Chapter 49, The Night of the Lonely King. Peace finally reigns supreme, and all people live in peace. Yet, every night, I sit alone in the empty palace, facing the screen wall. Though my shadow is gone, it still whispers in my heart, "You have finally become king." I smile wryly, speechless. Chapter 50, Spring and Autumn should not be king. The grey hair is gradually growing, and I climb the city and look far away, the world is thousands of miles away. Silently thought in my heart, at first, I just wanted to watch, but I was finally pushed to the throne. It turns out that not being a king is just a joke. The long wind swept in, and the sound shook the sky. I looked up to the sky and roared. I, in the spring and autumn period, should not be the king. The echo spread throughout the mountains and rivers, but no one heard it.